All right, what's going on, guys? Absolutely amazing week. Everything went according to plan. Perfect Friday, 12% green intraday. Still waiting for the gap up. It looks like we're going to be getting it Monday morning. I'm going to get into that. I'm not going to be going too crazy in depth in this video. I don't think it's really necessary, especially if you stop by the live stream on Friday. I think I covered pretty much everything in that live as well. What we're looking for going forward, the levels to watch out for. All of that. I'm expecting more upside Monday and probably all next week. That being said, let's get into the video, starting with the macro as always. I'm not going to go too in depth in the macro because I cover this every video, but here's the January and June equivalents here, green and yellow. And over here, same thing, January and June equivalents, green and yellow, starting from this trend both times. So bouncing off in January, your January equivalent, pull back into the June, bouncing off January, pull back into the June, descending wedge all the way through on both sides, the flat portion, and then your all-time low landmark, the lower low, the third bottom of the flat portion, whatever you want to call it. And again, retesting this macro trend, the most macro trend of AMC that dates back to IPO. So your first bounce here is support, second and third, fourth and fifth, the break below, rejecting it, your macro break, new macro, gap up, retest on this trend again, bounce off, and now we've pulled back again and establishing support on this trend and now curling up. Absolutely beautiful Friday. Could not have asked for a better day. Would have been nice to see the gap after hours. We didn't get it. It doesn't really mean anything that we didn't get it Friday. I mean, I said multiple times Monday was on the table. Can't really complain about a 12% day intraday. Once again, the first macro was a 92% move from bottom to top of your June equivalent. Second macro was a 1200% move bottom to the top of the June equivalent. The next macro that we get, when we do get this macro break, and the next macro will be larger than the previous two macros, and the price targets will be higher than the previous two macros, i.e. a higher percentage move. So that's what we're looking for going forward. So getting into the tracking now. If you've been watching for some time, I've been tracking the July 2023 100% rip after hours, the movement leading up to it, this iteration right here. I've been tracking this for some weeks now, tracking absolutely perfectly. And I've been going over it. If you're in the Discord, you've seen the call outs every day, the highs, lows, pullback, green today, whatever. So, I'll just really quickly run through some of the older charts here, calling for downside to the bottom of the channel here. And here's that downside back to the bottom of the channel. 1 second. So here's the downside to the bottom of the channel. And then calling for upside back to the top of the channel where we would reject. So again, looking for a pump back to the top of the channel. And here was back up to the top and then the rejection, battling to break out of the resistance here, establishing support. And then Friday, the actual breakout, the breakout of the channel and a 12% move to the upside. Tracked perfectly all the way through. Friday actually was day 29 of 29 of this iteration. So again, looking for more upside, looking for a gap up. Here is the January 2023 tracking. Babs is actually tracking this. If you're in the Discord, you know who he is, obviously. If you're not, you should join the Discord. And this is what he's been tracking. It's the same thing that I'm tracking. It's just a different point in time. We're tracking the same movement, except two different points in time. I'm tracking July, he's tracking January. It's the same fucking thing. Either way, you're expecting a gap up. Either way, you're expecting upside. And this is the January tracking now. So again, here's your break, and now we're looking for the rest of the upside to climb out of this bottom. Again, this bottoming formation we've seen multiple different times on AMC. Every time it's followed by upside. And if I'm not mistaken, every time it's followed with a gap. The gap up actually breaks you out of the bottom. Fractals being fractals. I mean, you could find this bottoming formation probably all over the chart. So that's that. Now we're using these points in time as reference for the current iteration, what we're going through, but this is not where we are on the macro. The macro positioning is a little bit different. The macro positioning, we're looking at the third bottom, the all-time low, the lower low landmark, which is where we are now. I've covered this a million times. This is the end of the previous macro, the flat portion, and the end of the current macro, the flat portion. So dropping down to it, very choppy at your first bottom, very choppy at your first bottom, and you gap up, you gap up. Double peak, second bottom, come down to that line, higher low on the daily, and then you gap up again, try peak, 3 pokes above this yellow line. That is your macro break line. As you see right here, this gap up, this is your macro break. In the previous macro, we're looking for the same thing. Target, $48. And then from the third peak, dropping down to the third bottom, the lower low and the all-time low landmark, which is where we are now, establishing support and about to climb out. Date range from the beginning to your squeeze was 342 days. Current cycle from the beginning to where we are currently, 309 days. 1-to-1 is roughly 1 month away. 30 trading days, more or less. I think date ranges actually include weekends, so it's probably sooner. It's probably a little bit sooner than that. But yeah, 30 days away, more or less, theoretically, from the peak, if we were to track this perfectly 1-to-1. I'm not saying that's the case, I'm just pointing it out. EMAs. Now, if you remember me saying multiple times, the EMAs are perfect as well. As the price action is the same, the EMAs on the daily are going to look relatively similar. And if you recall me saying about a month, maybe a month and a half ago on the way down here, that the 20 EMA would be lagging behind, but it would eventually meet the price action. And here we are. Friday, met the 20 EMA, and once we met the 20 EMA, what did I say? We're looking for a gap up. So again, here's meeting the 20 EMA, and then there's your gap up. That's what we're looking for. Also, the touch on the 20 EMA was Friday. This is January 15th. That's your touch on the 20. And this Friday, there's the touch on the 20, looking for a gap up over, I'm assuming we're gapping pre-market Monday. And that's that. Once we gap over the 20 price targets, I don't know. I'm just going to be straight up. And that's actually a good thing that I've given some levels, some possible levels, potentially landmark wise, theoretically, we should see $45. Now, I'm not saying it has to happen all at once. It could take a week, could take 2 weeks. I'm assuming it'll be relatively fast. It's possible it's just one day. We just gap up to that mark on Monday pre-market. Pretty drastic, but it is possible. And that's the target we're looking for, is roughly $45. So that's one of the targets. The other, you gapped right over the 20 EMA. I believe the 20 EMA is $17 right now. So it's possible we get a move up to like 20, 25, and then establish support on the 20. While that's going on, the 20 would curl, but the 20 EMA would curl back up, and then we're looking for the 20 to then cross the 50 EMA. Which would be lining up with the straight line part of the move, the macro break in your squeeze. So that's pretty much what we're looking for next. It's that. So again, the Bollinger Bands, this is going to be a pretty quick video. I don't think there's any need to really drag this out. The Bollinger Bands, once again, from IPO all the way to present day on AMC. The price action is normally in range in between the two bands all the way through since IPO. With the exception of three different points in time. The first being January 2021, the original squeeze on AMC right here. Third bottom, all-time low, squeeze. The Bollinger Bands open up to the downside like fucking crazy. After the squeeze, it closes back up around the price action, as you see here. And then right before the June squeeze, once again, the Bollinger Bands open up like fucking crazy to the downside. After the squeeze, it closes up. And then candles are wrapped around the bands all the way through until now, where the Bollinger Bands have once again opened up like crazy to the downside. We've only seen the Bollinger Bands do this 2 other times since IPO, and both of them were January and June 2021 while we were squeezing, or right before we were squeezing. So this looks fucking amazing. And then on top of that, the volume profile, and I've covered this multiple times, the volume profile is matching the January and June equivalents of volume that we saw in 2021. So again, that looks great as well. Okay, so RSI volume OBV update. First of all, the RSI on the weekly is still oversold, which is great. The RSI will be working its way back up to overbought, and I'm assuming the next time that happens, we'll be already squeezing. So that's that. RSI is oversold, bullish. OBV, new all-time high. On the weekly, OBV formed a new all-time high on Friday. Broke the all-time high on OBV. Looks fucking incredible. Volume profile. Once again, the levels of volume that we're seeing are matching the January and June 2021 levels of volume that we saw. And then just the macro, again, here's your January squeeze, here's your June squeeze, here's your V, and then the descending wedge. Macro break, January squeeze, June squeeze, the V, macro break, the wedge. Volume decreasing throughout the wedge until the end where it starts to pick up a little bit. You could see it start climbing into all-time high volume for your January squeeze. And then from there, again, decreasing volume all the way through the macro until the end where it starts picking up again. The volume, this volume level, again, you know, the January and June level volume that we're seeing right now is lining up with the breakout and retest of the macro, of the descending wedge. So that's great. The point being is that volume is picking up again, increasing again at the end of the macro. At the same time, OBV, new all-time high. And the reason being is because the green volume has outweighed the red all the way through the macro. From $400 all the way down to $7, the buying volume has outweighed the selling volume, which makes no sense. But that's just the market, you know, that's the way it is. It's just repeating macros and that's it. No complaints here. And then one more thing, and if you were in my live stream, you probably saw me talking about this, that AMC is just repeating January 15th over and over again on every time frame. So here is January 15th, the 1 minute chart. Here is AMC's macro, the weekly chart. It's a little old. I don't have, there's a couple weekly candles that are missing here, but I'm just using this just to show you. There's the W, January squeeze, pullback, ascending W, pullback, ascending W into the June squeeze, and then the flag, and then the downtrend. 1, 2, 3, 4 touches, 1, 2, 3, 4 touches, 1, 2, 3 bottoms, 1, 2, 3 bottoms, and then the knife. The knife, the V, your macro break, a gap up over the range. That's a micro fractal break. We're looking for our macro fractal break. And if you recall me saying from my very first video, when we do see our macro break, more than likely it'll be an overnight gap up to all-time highs. Just the same way we saw in January, right here. Overnight gap up to all-time highs. Not all-time highs, but your macro break. That's it. That's it for the video. I'm not going to drag it out. You know, honestly, it's really not even necessary for me to make a video today. The tracking is perfect. Whichever way you look at it. Tracking July, tracking January 2023, July 2023. This is tracked perfectly all the way through. And we're looking for a gap up now, a climb out of this bottoming formation. That's pretty much it. I really, you know, I'm not going to sit here and waste time. Tracking perfectly, expecting more upside. That's really as simple as it gets. Not to be like overly confident, but I'm certain we're seeing upside next week. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, I covered everything. I'm going to be live Monday. I have off Monday, so I'll be live all day, and I'll be covering price action and going over my thoughts. I'm expecting volatility next week, pretty much across the board. So I'll see you guys Monday.